an ultimate global podcast. Hello, and welcome to our special weekly podcast on trending international and social affairs. You're listening to Saurabh Kora and George Mavros from Sydney.
Welcome again to another exciting series of episodes that we are covering on environment and sustainability. We haven't done a lot of episodes on environment and sustainability. I think this is one of the rare episodes which is actually acting as an intersection between our special series of episodes on environment and sustainability. But since Oscar is also the CEO of Volta Rocks, it also becomes a part of our special series of episodes that we're doing with CEOs, founders, and co-founders. So I think this is one of the rare exceptions where there is a clear intersection between our two special series of episodes that we are doing. And I'm sure we are going to have some really fun conversations with you, Oscar, not only on the environmental sustainability part, but also on what Volta Rocks is doing. So just to give a brief context on that, Volta Rocks aims to make energy fun while helping homes, businesses, and councils reduce their carbon footprint and save on energy costs. That's what we're talking about today, an emphasis on environmental sustainability and reduced carbon footprint by 2030. That's the topic for discussion. But before we move into that, Oscar, do you want to briefly tell us a bit about yourself and what you do at Volta Rocks?
Of course. I thank you very much for the invitation, by the way. It's lovely to be here. So I've been, if you hear an accent, another one. I am from Chile. I hail from Latin America with a very mixed background of Austrian, Italian, and Spanish. And I've been in Australia since 2005, come as a student, as many of us did. And through my career, I started diving into the energy and home automation, which is one of my big hobbies. Fast forward 15 years, and this year we finally decided, me and one of my good friends and CTO, and to really use the learnings that we had with CNIs and SMEs and working with larger contracts and renewable projects, but for the home. The technology finally is catch up and the access to it is there. So we can actually deliver something for the home to have an application where they can understand the energy, make slot changes, accept and review plans, but more importantly, access rebates and grants, which the Australian government especially will be pushing more and more as part of the budget to be able to accelerate our transition to a greener country.
And why do you think that this is there is a strong emphasis on environmental sustainability in 2023 and moving forward from here on? We are seeing a lot of incidents around the world at the moment. There is bushfire happening in Canada. There have been bushfires previously as well. There have been flooding incidents previously as well. But why is there a strong emphasis now towards working on reducing carbon footprint?
I think the emphasis has been around for a while, but the truth is, as anything in life, as we get closer to the goal, the people that are falling behind are getting more stressed. So we got a goal for 2030 and further, and I strongly believe that a lot of efforts that we have done, they haven't been sticking to the wall. A lot of things have done enormous changes, impact and transformations that we haven't seen in many years have happened in the last 10 years. The introduction of electric car, the success of the deployment of electric car and competition, solar farming in third world countries and first world countries. So there is an argument to say that it's been a snowball growing, and now we're getting to a point that we, the residents, we the consumers, have the tools, the power, and now the government support to take that next stage. Before it was an investment to put solar. 15 years ago, it had to come out of your pocket. Now it's rebate and could be almost cost neutral. And beyond that, we have options like microgrids, PPPs, smart buildings. Things are happening because as the result of many years of pushing, and now we get into a point that we can just jump into a pool.
Yep. Oscar, before I pass it on to George, one of the biggest criticisms that all the climate change activists generally face is that you're talking about climate change, you're talking about all these incidents. That's pretty good. But are you also looking at an alternative framework of if we are not using the fossil fuels, are we ready for the next stage? Have we created an alternative framework, an alternative ecosystem where we can provide jobs, where we can have a proper alternative system for fossil fuels? Or are we just talking up in the air that we will reduce for a carbon footprint by 10% by 2030 because it's our political agenda? Because we want to say that to get more votes, and there is no clear vision on how to do that. So do you think that there is a clear lack of vision here on how we want to do that and why we want to do that?
Excellent question, by the way. Like, I love that question. And if I can break it down into a few points, I think it will be great for the conversation. So we're going to start that there's always going to be criticism and there's always going to be outliers. The outliers are arguably the ones that present that give us the limits of what we are able to do. In that sense, yes, we are setting goals, and it seems that it's not a very clear structured plan. But the fact is, if we're looking and waiting for the perfect plan, it's never going to come. And we set a goal and we pressure cook and see what comes out of the other thing, seems to be the not easiest, but the process that we're most familiar with. Should there be a better one? Of course, there's always a better one. Like, if we don't believe that we can always do better, I wouldn't be founding startups. And if I don't believe that we could do better, there wouldn't be re-elections and stuff. The complexity of the mechanisms and players within any industry, but specifically sustainability and renewable projects, is very deep. You work from people that said, no, I'm never going to use electric because it doesn't have enough range. I can pull my truck, or I can pull this, I can pull that. And that's fair enough. But you're not fighting, perhaps in the current state of electric is not for you, but you can be opposed that smart cars in small cities are a benefit. So it's a matter of not being completely strict to what a good plan should be, and just realize that sometimes the things come in 3-4 layers, which is the first, you throw everything and see what sticks. Whatever stick you perfect, stage 2, whatever sticks you perfect, stage 3, you innovate, and stage 4, you learn and go back to the one. So I believe in a structure and a structured process, and within that structured process, the underlying can be and seem a little bit chaotic, like being in the middle of a hurricane or a tornado. Like, it might seem peaceful inside, but everything else is destroying.
George, we have had a couple of discussions before as well. You and I have already discussed in 2 or 3 episodes on, all kinds of things, from Greta Thunberg to what kind of things UN is doing around the globe. And people keep on talking about, governments keep on talking about this thing, and no action is mostly taken. It's mostly a political agenda, and it's just environment is just a sidetrack. What are your thoughts on today's topic, and any questions for Oscar?
My question to Oscar is going to be the same as I have asked every other person that's come on this podcast about sustainability and reducing carbon footprint, both of which I support the concept of. Both of which there's lots of people that get branded with naysaying or anti-environment or all those other things, because we ask a very awkward and a very difficult question. And the question that I'm asking, Oscar, which I have asked everybody in this area because I truly want to know the answer. It's all very well and good for us to have solar power energy and hydropower energy and all the other sustainable energies. But we can't generate electricity through wind farms without wind. We can't generate solar energy without sunshine, and we don't have the capacity for battery storage at the moment. But what we do have in this country in particular, one of the richest countries for coal, uranium, oil, we have a situation where we are turning off the horrible energy producers because it's bad for our carbon footprint. And we don't seem to be terribly bothered about the fact that come the 1st of July, we're talking in New South Wales at least, of about a 25% increase in electricity. Telling my 78-year-old or 95-year-old neighbours, or telling my 50-year-old or 35-year-old neighbours who are on the breadline, don't worry about it, this is all for the good of 2030. They may very well not be in a house, let alone have terrible electricity. So what is the answer to the situation of getting from here to there? Because to me, we're switching off power stations and we haven't replaced base load.
I think the fascinating part of your question, and it's a very interesting question, is that it comes from a very philosophical perspective that doesn't. It's impossible to answer with certainty. However, it opens the conversation to something that between the three of us we can mold and see what's up. So I'll tell you from my point of view, I agree with you. The push to transition and the accelerating of it is almost like losing weight. If you want to start losing weight, it's very hard to cut the carbs immediately. You need the carbs; they're good for you, in a certain degree. But if you have got, like me, like 20, 30 kilos over your standard weight, it's a routine and the force and the pressure that you put upon yourself to train every day, to wake up early, to do it. And every day you start getting better. Now, am I going to stop eating pasta? I got an Italian background, right? I'm not going to start eating pasta. But I have to manage and balance the way to be able to create a transition away from it. So to the conversation of sustainability is, we set these goals, and the reason that we get so pressured is because the milestones are not achieved on the clear take times that we have. And the conversation with traditional and fossil fuels and the renewable is being normally and commonly very antagonistic instead of complementary. The answer, I don't believe, is one or the other. The answer is a transition to a new level. We have to wait for having long-term battery. That's a reality. And Germany already did a paper about it, and the reality is long-term battery is the final strength to transit the solution. We have to keep the lights on, and we have to ensure the well-being of every citizen in Australia, or every person in Australia or in the world. And these sudden changes might look very sudden, and I agree with you, and perhaps some of them are. But I throw the question at you: do you think this antagonistic position that both renewable and fossil have against each other might be a cause that we're so late? Instead of transforming the conversation towards, we need to do this for the good of ABC, how do we collaborate together to do it? Working with a lot of generators in the past, not directly, but mostly modeling jobs and stuff like that, you come to realize that there's also an apathy from both ends to not integrate and understand what the process is. Or to try to collaborate for the greater good. And the one that pays is us. The one that pays your neighbor, and one of the main reasons that we founded Volta, because what tools do you have to fight the price surge? What tools do we have? The only tool we have is the free market, open market. And the only rule in the open market is competition. And if you don't have direct access to competition, reliable, fast, and almost autopilot, how are you going to be able to transact from your home perspective? So I think it's an open question that will be answered within time, but I trust that innovation, engineering, ingenuity will not accept the pressure of this antagonistic view and understand that if we're going to get there, we have to get together.
Okay, let me ask you this. And I'm asking you, but I'm hoping that somebody watching this is going to hear this and stop and think about the question. You have your wife, your children, your parents in my car.
Mm-hmm.
I had committed to getting them from here to Brisbane within 12 hours. And to do that, I needed to travel at about 80 kilometres an hour. But through my inefficiency, through my neglect, through my lack of planning, I now only have 6 hours. Are you comfortable with your entire family in my car for me to now travel at 160 kilometres an hour instead of 80 kilometres an hour, because I promised you I'd get them there at a certain time? Or would you rather me be late, but they be safer?
Is that Tesla? No, I'm joking.
You wouldn't
good
do
question.
It. You wouldn't do it.
I am
you would not say, well, look, George, you've lost 6 hours, so just go at 160 kilometres an hour instead of 80 so that you get there on time. What you'd say is, listen, that's not good enough, but I would rather them be alive and late than dead trying to meet a dead line. What we've done is governments have set up. I am a traditional Liberal voter, so I make that very clear for anybody that thinks I'm saying this just because I'm a Labor voter. I'm not. I am a traditional Liberal voter, and they've been in the power for the majority of this. We have sat on our hands. We've done nothing for so many years, and now we have the Labor government coming in saying, but we set this goal of 2030, so to hell with whether we've got enough power, to heck with whether the prices are right or wrong. Doesn't matter if we cause pain and suffering, we're just going to get to 2030. Guys, except that we're going to go to 2040, but do the damn thing properly. Because I can tell you, there are people now that I speak to. I'm a CEO of a foundation. There are people now that I speak to that are freezing already because they can't afford the electricity on overnight. So when you tell that person, yes, but it's for the benefit of mankind, they don't really care.
I completely understand and to a certain degree agree.
So I'm not saying we should stop. What I'm saying is, but you can't just turn off. You can't turn off Liddell Power Station because it's bad for the environment if you can't replace the energy coming out of it.
I understand what you're saying, and completely. I go back to the progress and collaboration. My issue not my issue, but my point of view escapes the political sides. I come from a very private and mostly aware of the commercials and growth of private enterprises, and from that point of view, what I observe and to a certain degree experience is there. Yeah, the government can point these goals, but there has to be a will from the other end. And now we are facing a disconnect between achievable goals and what privately or private companies are able to do, whether it is because there's lack of confidence on the progress of the plans of the milestones, lack of funding to be able to transfer to create the transition, or whatever the situation has end up to get us here. I think sometimes from a founder point of view, I look at this and I just pick the problem that I think I can solve. Philosophically, I want a sustainable future without affecting the most need. We doing what we're doing for the low and medium income households. I am adamant and understand. We even wrote in our little magazine, The Vote, that one of our collaborators wrote that there is energy poverty, and it exists in Australia, and that's the reality of it. So if we know that the transition is taking time, and we know that there's problems, and they know that the process in which they're being set has missed some milestones and maybe overcompensate with other ones, is the solution to ask for a replan, or can we combine? All right, they said that, and this is how we're going to put a grain of salt, and this is how we're going to move it and work it. And part of that, I think, and in terms of like where you're talking about people there, obviously they need to save the future. I do have one issue with sustainability. It's a little tiny bit controversial, and it's one of the reasons that we created Volta, is that they make sustainability and carbon footprint reduction aspirational. And it's not. It shouldn't. And what I mean by aspirational is you have to have solar. You have to have an EV. You have to. And you're talking about $150,000 that you have to spend to help. And that I disagree with. If you have the resources and you can help, please do.
Yeah.
If you can do it, please do. But for the rest of the population that works month by month, I come from a country where people live day by day, and people live in month by month.
Yep.
When that bill is $50 extra, that's meals, man. That's actually tangible. That's a trip. That's a credit card that you have to use to pay for your Mikey. It's a different thing. So that in that sense, I agree with you that all these are being done at a massive thing, and the core has not been taken care of, and not because there is no availability. It's just not well communicated. The fact that if you're a certain income, you can have your heater replaced. Your landlord can get incredible rebates to put solar in your house. But all these things are amazingly put there, but not taken. There's a gap between us and the producer of these amazing grants and programs. So I take it, I understand where you're coming from, the great scale of the politics and everything. But my perspective, and again, because I'm not that smart, I can only pick one thing. My perspective is, how do we help them now?
Yes.
How do we support them right now and engage with them and say, hey, I'm here to talk about sustainability. I don't want solar. Wait a second. This is not about selling you something for you to be sustainable. This is not about upgrading and making you spend more money and increase your cost of living to make you sustainable because you're saving petrol. This is about, this can be fun, man. And this is start small. This is start picking up rubbish. This is start going walks to the beach. This starts with better road for your bike. This starts to accessing every rebate your government puts. How do you, a person that works 10, 12 hours a day, is able to access all these around there to help you with this specific problem? The bill is getting up, but there are government grants and there are community grants and there are community groups trying to help them with rebates and grants and support and free upgrades. But when you're working 10, 12 hours a day, how do you get them? When you don't want to read.
The other issue that we've got with this, like so many things, is not in my backyard. I did some work about 6 or 8 years ago, and I was brought in to consult on a project about 2 years ago. And it's a concept which is called waste to energy. So it's about taking all the garbage, and I mean literally taking the garbage that's collected every day of every week of every month of every year from every bloody household, and burning it at a ridiculous temperature. I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I don't know the ins and outs, but converting that into energy. Yes. 2 years ago, I was involved in working with a company that was looking at this project yet again, and I think they had approached 5 or 6 different councils throughout Australia, and in every case, despite all the information that they could provide, there was not one LGA area out of the 6 that they had spoken to that believed that their people would allow one of these plants built in their area. Now, part of that is because we don't trust governments anymore. So when a government says to you, come on in and do this, it's safe, you say, hang on, this is the same bloke that told me there was weapons of mass destruction, but there weren't. This is the same mob that told me that there was babies overboard, but there weren't. So why should I believe them on anything that they tell me that could harm me? And that's half the trouble that we've had with the COVID. The people that have rejected the COVID story don't believe the authorities are telling them the truth. Now, whether they are or not, I can't guarantee you one way or the other. But based on history, it worries me that the bloke I'm relying on has lied to me before. When I say bloke, I'm using that as a generic term. So not in my backyard means that I know for a fact from work that I've done, one of the areas I work in, Oscar, is patents and innovation. I know that this sort of technology has been around for at least 6 to 10 years that I know of, but we're not doing anything with it. Now, I know that there's a commercial desire to do it, but again, we've got to be. The woke society believes that we need solar energy or hydro energy or whatever energy. So we don't look at that, which we could have done, and that could have been a stepping stone towards it.
I think what you have pinpoint there is again this animosity through the aggressivity of both ends to defend their points. I carry, in my car, I carry a very big load and trailer, and I go camping with my daughters. There is no an electric car that can replace me. I'm in the waiting list for the Cybertruck, but I'm gonna figure out how to pay $150K, which I could get a Land Cruiser. So I understand from that perspective as well. The other car that we have is an hybrid. So we do what we can. Do I have 90, 100K laying around to have a car that only fulfills 60% of what I do? No. Can I? If I put a lot of effort, maybe. But this is when we start sacrificing and make it aspirational. So I have to adapt to the technology. The adapt is not wrapped into my lifestyle. Whether you're wrong, whether I'm right or not wrong, that's evolution of the innovation will determine how we're going to migrate to better technologies. The main point that I want to say is I want to point here is the animosity of the world culture or the traditional culture. That it's an illusion. It doesn't exist. It's the same people. I've been in the table with people that completely think the opposite of me, and they have lovely arguments. Lovely, strong, smart arguments. And I've been talking with people that think exactly like me, and I have the same. And I talk with people that are opposed to me, and they're dumb, ridiculous arguments. And I talk with people that think like me as well, and they have dumb and ridiculous arguments. It's just human nature. Taking a team on a petrol product is ridiculous. They're not soccer teams. They're not AFL teams. I'm not for or hold them. That's just arbitrary. The core of the problem, the core of the solution here is that we can't be aspirational. We can't tell you and force you to it. The reality is we are in a problem with our climate, and whether you want to accept it or not is your prerogative. The impacts of changes, whether climate action is this or not, or climate change, or whatever you want to believe. But the truth is, and this is very hard to get an argument. If you throw gas, it's gonna be toxic. If the lithium creates gas, but it also attaches to the dependency of the few oil producers of the world, creating a competitive market where we can make oil, but fossil cheaper, and we can make energy cheaper. When we all hold on to one, we lose the one thing that had got us into a free economy, which is the competition.
Yeah.
If you're not allowed to competition, you will create friction, and that has to be clean from teams on base of fusion. I'm a gearhead, man. Like I grew up fixing cars and with my dad, and I loved it. Does that make me that I'm a a old school car versus never buy a new one? No, man. Like I'll buy what is safe, what I can afford, and what I think is better for the environment within my budget. And that is a good thing for anyone that does it. If you're buying a Corolla and you can afford a Leaf and they both work the same, get the Leaf. But don't think that you need to get this crazy thing and take teams on something that we live here to be happy, to move forward, to progress, to innovate and create. What takes us away from that is unimportant debates of whether I'm a team fossil or team solar. Like that makes no argument in my head. Again, if anybody thinks differently, of course they're right. There is no right and wrongs. For me to be right, nobody has to be wrong. And for me to be wrong, nobody has to be right. That's the beauty of having 6 billion minds in this world. But the true realization is that perhaps, going back to the first point that we're talking in the first question, perhaps this antagonism that we put into these, almost make-believe characters, Mr. Fossil and Mr. Renewable. They're not people, man. They're all businesses. They're all here to make some cash, and one has a bigger impact than the other. And how do we, make them work together so we can get into a point where everybody with our energy is lower, and do it within a timeline that doesn't, no point to be completely renewable if there's no plants in the world.
So coming back to where we started, what is it that Voltarox does or aims to do to be part of this movement?
I first want to give something to every person not attached to a retailer. November last year, the Australian government released the first line of CDR, Consumer Data Rights for Open Energy. You probably remember CDR from open banking, which caused waves and waves of transformation across the third-party applications that you can have, like Xero, like Frollo. There's a lot of applications to budget connected to your bank account. Now that's in energy. AGL, Origin, and Energy Australia are currently live with some problems. We're teething this process. That now gives me the access to reliable, direct, every half an hour, every 5 minutes in some cases, meter data from your home without having to be your retailer. So you can monitor it on a third-party app, which then allows me to integrate to multiple things. Number one, autopilot to change plans. What are your priorities in a plan? Find the cheaper one or ask your retailer to match the offer. And the third one is, with the details that we have, the state you live and your consumption, you qualify for these rebates and grant. Click here and get it done. That's the now. The future, I want this to be a tool, a smart enough tool to be able to see 100 homes in the same area with anonymized data and said, you guys are beautiful for a microgrid. And if we can get a government grant to do this microgrid, your energy is zero. How can we do this? Like in the future, is empower small and large communities to make their own decisions in energy, to be able to require and procure energy as CNIs do it, as SMEs, direct from the market, with larger contract, PPAs, which ensures a greener input, but also ensures a lower price, maintain and empower for them. So our thing is to empower consumers, connect with councils and businesses to help them empower their own employees and constituents. That's, if I have to be philosophical about it, that's Volta. If I have to be tagline about it, is we save energy and we make it fun.
Very good. Saurabh, would you like to join us in this conversation?
Yeah, well, I was so desperate to join this conversation, but there was a very major argument going on between...
Not an argument, a discussion. Don't
course, of
confuse the
course.
two.
Of course. And I think this discussion reminds me of something which I saw in the morning, early morning today, when I was coming to the office. So when I come to the office from Waterloo to Barangaroo, I cross this beautiful suburb called Redfern. And there is a metro station they are building there for Waterloo. So there's a new metro station they're building there for Waterloo. And outside that station, it says, building Sydney for a better future. That's one thing. But I had to wait half an hour in that traffic jam just to read the Redfern station. So what it implies is you're building Sydney for a better future, but you're disrupting the current generation. You're disrupting the present uh, generation. Now, an alternative can be that when there is peak hours, why are you having a construction activity during a peak hour? When you know that there is going to be traffic, and that there are going to be a lot of cars on the road, it means that you're trying to build a better future, which you will be building even after 5 years. So even after you build this metro project, there will be some other project, there will be some other project. You're always building something for the future. You cannot build anything for the future by disrupting the present. That's what I think. And which brings us back to the point that we were discussing before. I feel that if we can articulate what we are trying to do and the action plan that we have without having any disruption to the current generation, I think that's when you'll also have support from the side where George was coming from, that there is nothing wrong with climate change advocacy. The only thing which is wrong is the disruption that it causes to the current generation, which I can definitely agree on. But Oscar, I've got a question for you here. You talk about that Volta is giving a complete picture of the consumption habits, but are there any general habits that you feel the citizens can adopt out of Volta as well towards their role towards a better future?
I leave it, man. I leave it because my wife and my two daughters are incapable of turning a switch off.
Obviously, your daughters are teenagers.
No, mate. 5 and 1.5.
Oh, mate, you wait till they get to teenage. You don't know what you're missing out on yet.
Oh, mate. But they just turn things on, and it's always on.
Yeah.
The heater, lights, aircon, like it's something that doesn't come through it. So in terms of that, it is a discipline thing. There has to be one champion in the house. And what I mean by that, you'd be surprised the difference that makes, for example, to turn your air conditioner when it's going to be a hot day to a lower power earlier than when the heat peaks. And it might sound insignificant, but in a medium house, you'll save $3 to $5 in a couple of days, man. Like just on the heat wave. The same thing, obviously, if you have one peak, just dishwasher. But if you have your dishwasher and you have your washing machine, go to the Victorian Energy upgrade or your state upgrade and see if you qualify for a green upgrade. And the cost is marginal, and they give you a brand new energy efficient one. The same thing with your water heater. In homes, bamboo is my best friend. Like my daughters, the size where my daughter's rooms are, the sun hits hard, and instead of ramping up the air conditioner, just some bamboo blinds on the outside. They roll during the day when it's normal, and roll them down, and the difference is incredible. The same thing with little things like covering your draft. It helps a lot. Maintain the house seal, maintains the temperature a lot better, which is one thing that I have to criticize out of this lovely country. Amazing builders, incredible speed to get there, and they're populating, they're creating homes for people as fast as they can. But mate, seal it. Like just get that seal going on, man. Get that use. I don't know, like in Germany, my sister lives in Denmark. You got those double seal windows, and they have a little heater or the steam heater, and that kind of like small apartment and heats it all. So it's the warning of little things. And please, no, please, but if you feel like it and if you think it's positive, there are so many things you can do with your kids that actually help. Tiny little things. Like when I'm in the park, I always go with the doggy bags, sorry. So we're going to the park with my daughter, and you see a bottle, or you see something dirty, put it in the doggy bag, put it in the bin. Those tiny little changes, they might not be significant in your carbon footprint, but it's a trigger to your head. It's what sustainability really is. It's an everyday exercise when you have to adopt discipline. The rest, whether if it's automated, if it's connected to your retailer, if you can automate, if we can automate applying for your grants, if we can make it smart, don't worry, we'll do it. But your understanding and aspiration of a sustainable future from day to day, that's something that has to come up within without being preachy. Like nobody wants like, I just bought a blah, 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 and I'm super green. Like, yeah, good. But what are you doing tomorrow? So is buying an expensive EV gives you a green lead for 2 years? Or is it what you did today? And then we have to think of what to do tomorrow. This challenge of climate action and reduction is day by day. It's not month by month. It's not year by year. It's day by day. Every tiny little thing counts. And when you're a founder and you have started your startup and you have worked hard, it takes you a while. But when you do it, when you get there, realize that everyday wins are almost more important than a yearly win. That big home run that everybody's looking for is fantastic if it comes. But if you don't, you have 364 days. You need to have little runs on the ball. And sustainability is the same, I believe. It's an everyday thing where you put your rubbish. We started, when I was little, recycling, there was not a bin for recycling, man. There was just one bin. Now we have bins for recycling. Make it count. Put the right things in the right bin. Collaborate with your neighbors if you can. So it starts with little things, and it can be social and community without having to be, I'm so green that I make my own clothes out of like all shoe rags. And if you do, good on you. But there has to be a balance where we can adapt.
Again, I think with recycling bins, there is always this controversy. A lot of the times when you go to these recycling bins, they've got a symbol for that yellow means that's where you have to throw the bottle. Red means that's where you have to throw the garbage. A lot of the times when you are in rush, and if those signs are not visible to you, you can put garbage into different bins, So it needs to be clearly articulated that this color represents this. A lot of the times we just forget about which color represents what, isn't it?
Well, and that's the thing. Like, that's what I mean. It has to be a discipline effort. There's little things that happen like that, but life gets in the way. But if it's imprinted in our head, like you can talk with an athlete that's done sports. That guy, rain, sick, whatever it is, at 6:30 is running, and it's kind of not at the extreme, but it's kind of like where we have to get as a community and a population, because the perhaps untrust to the government or insecurities with where they're at, that they're not going to be at peace. It's very strange that a country really trusts their government, because it's elected a majority. It's the system is clearly, creates debate for a reason. But what doesn't create that level of debate is what you are able to do, because that's within you. That's you, yourself, and you. And that is kind of like what I think we can empower a little bit more, because I have no power over the government. I don't have power over the antagonists that they do. But if we have 20,000 people talking about it, and we have 40,000 people agreeing on a base level of what we're going to do, maybe our voice is louder.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Oscar. I'm a bit conscious about your time here, but thank you so much for an engaging discussion on environmental sustainability. Before we leave for today, a lot of the times we just ask this question of, you talked about a lot about carbon footprint, but in a layman's terminology, how would you define what's a carbon footprint? And what do you mean by reduction in that? So we might want to end up with that, just to understand from a layman's perspective on how would you define carbon footprint in your words, Oscar? And what do you mean by reduction of that?
Without getting too into it, I think the simplest way to is your impact in your surrounding environment. What actions do you do can be improved to reduce your impact into your surrounding environment? That's the simplest way to explain this, without getting into what carbon is produced or blah 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 blah. What is the percentage of energy? The impact that you have in your environment has a footprint, and in certain cases, especially dedicated with energy, is carbon. So what activities in your house are waste and which ones are value add? My wife letting the light on the toilet or the bathroom 2 hours after she has a shower, waste. My air conditioner turning overnight because somebody forgot to turn it off, waste. So it is the little things that we can do to get to a standard point, and then you can go, you know what? I'm going to go further. I'm going to put solar. You know what? I'm going to go further. I'm going to do this and that. First is the base.
Well, thank you so much, Oscar, for your time and participation in today's episode. We hope to cover more episodes on environment and sustainability, and probably have you on some more panel discussions ahead.
For sure, man. Absolute pleasure.
This is an Ultimate Global Podcast. Hello, and welcome to our special weekly podcast on trending international and social affairs. You're listening to Saurabh Kora and George Mavros from Sydney.